Welcome, everybody, to Inside Boxing Daily on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. I'm your host for Inside Boxing Daily, Mike Goodpaster. And right now, I would like to welcome in my co-host, Jeremiah Preisser.
Good. Hey, what's up, Mike? Let's go. Let's get this thing rolling, man.
It's always creepy when you say good evening anyways.
I know. That's what I stopped myself.
I know. But I always feel like the little 9-year-old boy walking down the street. Hey. But, all right. So I want to remind everybody, we are brought to you by the Retired Boxers Foundation. Alex Ramos and Jackie Richardson. Make sure you check them out on Facebook. And we think we've figured out what our Skype problem is, why we haven't been able to take callers the last couple nights. But we're going to try to fix that over the next couple days. If you have any questions during the show, you can tweet them to us, direct message, at Grueling Truth. And we will go from there, Jeremiah. And we have a special guest tonight who is a listener, Matthew O'Neill, who's been trying to get in for 2 days and couldn't. So we just got his email. We added him to it. How you doing, Matthew?
Yeah, I'm doing good.
All right. So I suppose you wanted to talk about Fury Wilder, too. So do you have any comments about the fight or what you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, so my name is Matthew O'Neill. I'm from Plymouth, Massachusetts. I competed as a super heavyweight boxer back in 1998 and 1999. I beat Preston Hartzog when he was in the World Class Athlete Program. I also beat Jeffrey Knocken. He was on the LSU National Baseball Championship team twice. I watched the Wilder versus Fury rematch, and it looks like Wilder got old overnight. Like his skills had eroded, and he lacked balance and coordination throughout the fight. And it was kind of strange seeing him box like that, because I remember him having a lot of skills and exhibiting skills, but in this particular fight, it looks like he was an old man.
I don't think he's ever exhibited any skills, Matthew. I mean, he's exhibited skills when people do not come at him. I think the problem is he's got bad, as he would say, feet work, and when somebody gets in his grill, I don't think he has an answer for it. Jeremiah?
Right,
Yeah, and I mean, you've been saying that for, Jesus, pretty much as long as we've been talking about Deontay Wilder. You've been saying that, when somebody goes after him, cuts a distance, doesn't let him extend his arms, he's going to have big problems. And I mean, that's kind of what we saw. I mean, the biggest problems that he was having, I mean, he had some struggles with guys beforehand. And I noted in the 3-fight series that he had when he was at his biggest weight, when he was, 228, 229, against Duhaupas, who went 11 rounds and arguably should have went longer. Sorry, they stopped Duhaupas on his feet. And then he had Spilka, which he had trouble with, and I think stopped him in the 9th round. And then Eric Molina, who I believe also went 9 and stunned Wilder, in the course of that fight too. But yeah, I mean, I think it has been a matter of guys giving him, paying him a lot of respect, letting him maintain his distance. And in doing so, they eventually get caught and get dropped, and that's all she wrote. But yeah, I mean, you and I have both we've not been a proponent of his technical ability or anything like that for a long time. And yeah, I mean, I think Fury did what we thought somebody would eventually do, and kind of expose the world to his shortcomings. And again, I think that's what we saw.
Go ahead, Matthew.
Right, and Wilder has not been knocked down since 2010. The last time he was knocked down in a boxing match was back in 2010 against Harold Sconiers. Yeah, when I watched him fight in the beginning, I thought his chin was weak. He's exhibited some punch resistance over the last few years, but looks like he's vulnerable right on the top of his head, and that's where Fury hurt him. Not so much on his
there
chin.
Too, Matthew. I think most people are. Top of the head and the ear. You get hit like that, and that hurts. But I would also make the case that he's not really fought too many punchers, Matthew.
Right.
I mean, He got knocked down by Harold Sconiers. And Luis Ortiz, I mean, I get so tired of hearing about Luis Ortiz and the Boogeyman. His best win in the amateurs and professionals combined was Brian Jennings. So it's hard to take Luis Ortiz serious. Plus, they fought, 13 rounds, and Luis Ortiz probably won 9 or 10 of them.
Right. I mean, that looked like a bad sign when Ortiz was outboxing him.
Yeah.
When I saw the rematch and Ortiz won every single round.
Yeah. I didn't see that fight. I was going to watch it after I got home because I was coaching a high school football game, and Jeremiah told me not to worry about it. It was basically they stared at each other for 5 rounds, and then Wilder knocked him out. So, go ahead.
No. I was just going to say, yeah, I did warn you. It was a bit like the first fight. I mean, there were a lot of similarities there, but Ortiz controlled the action a bit better, and he didn't let Wilder get into it like he did the first time until he got caught with that one right hand. But yeah, we can move on to something else if you like.
No, I'm still going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about Deontay Wilder made it clear he's going to exercise the rematch clause. The fight must happen by July 18th, according to the contract. The only problem I see there is Bob Arum wants to push this back to September or October. I would think if I'm Tyson Fury, I would want to have this fight by July 18th, Matthew.
Definitely, because I think that Wilder has to end his career within the next 2 years because I just don't see him boxing for another 5 or 7 years.
Well, I think I think a rematch will end his career.
It could.
So,
it depends upon if they're willing to stop the fight prematurely. I did not hear too many people think the rematch was stopped prematurely. I think it was a good stoppage.
I think it could have been stopped a round or two earlier. I think it was obvious what was going to happen.
Yeah. I think the only one complaining about the stoppage is Deontay Wilder, and Diaz is his co-trainer. I mean, just about everybody. And again, I was talking about this somewhere else. Oh yeah, when I was talking to 3 British guys. I mean, it's damn near unanimous that fans and writers and just about everybody that I've seen agrees that was the right stoppage. I mean, as much as Deontay Wilder is complaining about the result and this and that, all these peripheral issues, the fact is that Kenny Bayless was on the verge. You could see it. I mean, complaint falls flat on its face because Bayless was almost there anyways. A white towel, again, that was just happening before the official call off happened. Again, Bayless was right there and ready to call it anyways. And I agree. I mean, I actually think that Fury should just speed up the process, get out of the way, just take a little time to celebrate, of course, and I would just get right back in the gym. Pummel Deontay Wilder again, and then maybe because he has 2 fights left on his contract, if I'm not mistaken. So, Fury constitutes one of those. That Top Rank is setting up another guy under their promotional banner for him. Sorry about my voice. I just got done working out, so I'm a little raspy here. But to me, it's like you get the Fury fight out of the way, and then Top Rank is going to want you to fight somebody under their promotional banner, somebody like Jarrell Miller. Oscar Rivas would probably be one of the choices as well. You get those fights out of the way, and then you look forward to, right? You could beat Deontay Wilder in the summer. You could potentially beat another guy like Rivas or Miller in the winter, maybe early 2021, and then you settle for a showdown in the spring or summertime for Anthony Joshua, which is the big one. Fury said he only wants about 3 more fights altogether anyways. That would pretty much do the trick for him. And if he were to beat Anthony Joshua, no matter where it is, it's going to be a massive fight, and rest your laurels on that. I think he's, he would have something to hang his head high on.
Well, I think you're looking at a September, October date if you're Bob Arum, because you want to fight this in the Vegas Raiders' new stadium, which will be open then.
Right. Well, I beat Preston Hartzog in the state of Colorado. It was a USA boxing sanctioned match. And I think that the Wilder Fury, it proves that the Nevada State Athletic Commission and that most of our big fights are happening in Nevada now. that some of the smaller commissions, Oklahoma State or the Midwestern states, they don't have as much recognition or clout.
All right, we have a question from Bearcat27 on Spreaker, who wants to know if we know pay-per-view buys yet. Either one of you guys heard anything? I haven't yet, but I also haven't looked today.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I read briefly that the fight was lucrative. It was priced at $79.99, and surprisingly, there were a lot of people who purchased it.
Well, I would like to issue a complaint to ESPN. If I am an ESPN Plus subscriber, you got to at least give me $10 off of that price.
I think that's fair. I think they should do something like that. And I saw somebody else mention that too. And I think that's a good complaint. But in regard to the pay-per-view buys, the only thing that I've heard so far is Michael Montero say that it's trending. According to, again, I don't know what his sources are. He's an insider of sorts. So, I believe that he's roughly on the mark here. And he said it is trending towards 2 million pay-per-view buys. And if it does 2 million or even close to that, that's considered lucrative. That's good business. And if you're Deontay Wilder, as we talked about Sunday, Mike, if you're Deontay Wilder, you go right back into that third fight, because it's possible after this that you may get upset you might have an Andy Ruiz moment where you get knocked off by somebody lesser, trying to maintain your status until Tyson Fury has his schedule open up again for you. So, if you get over 1 million, it just makes too much financial sense for Wilder to get that third fight. But that's what I've heard about. It looks as if it's trending towards 2 million.
All right, now Ring Magazine today updated our heavyweight rankings. They dropped Wilder to 3 behind Dillian White. Do you guys agree with that? We'll start off with Jeremiah.
I don't. I mean, as anybody who listens to this show regularly or, is friends with me on Facebook or whatever, I'm a part of the Transnational Board. We do our own rankings. There's a few more guys on the panel than there are at the ring. The ring does a good job. I'm not gonna bash them. I think they get it wrong sometimes, but then again, I think we get it wrong sometimes too. I mean, it's just the name of the game. And I think White above Wilder is the wrong call right now. I'm not a stickler for the position though. So it's like if you have White above Wilder, it doesn't bother me that much, to be honest with you. I mean, a lot of this is just, a lot of it's conjecture. It's like, do you think White has a better resume? Should he be promoted because he's been winning? I don't know. But personally, I think Wilder should be right behind Anthony Joshua right now. When it comes to White, I think you could argue that, overall he's beaten the better opposition than Wilder. But I like, when you look at Wilder's run, right, he's fought Fury twice, Ortiz twice, and I think in the span of 20 months, that's a pretty tough schedule for a heavyweight boxer. And he's won 2 of those fights, of course, against Luis Ortiz. He's a top 10 guy. So to me, Wilder should still maintain his position behind Anthony Joshua. But again, I'm not a stickler. To me, it's not. I don't have that big of a problem if White goes ahead. Again, he has been winning, but the reason I would keep Wilder at number 3 is because White really didn't look good. I mean, he had a failed PED test. Again, I know they said it was contamination. I always get skeptical of that stuff, especially when, the Saudi Arabia fight was right around the corner, and they just said, all right, go ahead. And, he looked like crap against Vok. That was a post-prime Vok who's like 40 years old, took his stuff, and it was a decent fight. But you would think that this stage White would be getting somebody like that out of there, because in fact Vok had been stopped, I think, by like a cruiserweight or a small heavyweight. I think some British prospect, not a few fights beforehand. So to me, Wilder belongs above White currently, but it's not a big deal.
All right, Matthew?
Well, of course, Wilder has been World Boxing Council champion for 5 years, and I think that's the best belt in boxing.
No, it isn't. There's no best belts in boxing, Matthew. There could only be one world champion, and now there is, and there hasn't been since, at best, Vladimir Klitschko, but in all reality, probably Lennox Lewis.
Right. When President Donald Trump pardoned Jack Johnson in 2018, he had the WBC belt on his desk. I think President Trump is trying to signify, I think he thinks that is the best belt to have.
Well, you know what? President Trump thinks a lot of things, and I don't like Republicans or Democrats, but he also pardoned Jack Johnson, was a joke in itself. Um, I don't really care who's ranked number 2. My biggest problem, Matthew, with these rankings is Dillian White at 2, Wilder at 3. I don't really care there. Number 4 is still Luis Ortiz. Now, I think a case could be made that Andy Ruiz should be ahead of Luis Ortiz. I think there's a case Joseph Parker and Alexander Povetkin should be ahead of Luis Ortiz. Am I nuts?
I think that Ruiz should have beat Joshua in the rematch if he was in better shape. He won the first fight so clearly, and then he showed up for the second fight completely out of shape.
Well, see, this is kind of what my point is. I think Ruiz has beaten Joshua. Luis Ortiz beat Bryant Jennings 4 or 5 years ago. And I would even say Alexander Povetkin gave Joshua a tough fight. He beat Mike Hunter, who is ranked in the top 10. And Joseph Parker has some legit wins on his. I still don't see why Luis Ortiz is ranked number 4.
Yeah, I mean, so transnational, again, not to toot our own horn, but we have Andy Ruiz above Luis Ortiz. I mean, I think I fall in line with your rationale there that Luis Ortiz, I mean, I get why he's still a top 10 guy. It makes sense. I mean, really, to me, after the top 3 guys, which is Fury, who, I think is the heavyweight champion of the world, Joshua, who I think is right behind him, Wilder behind him, once you get to about that position, I do think White belongs behind Wilder. But then after that, when it comes to Ortiz, Ruiz, and Povetkin, Povetkin actually had a draw with Michael Hunter. That's just
won, no, so
yeah. But it
I
seemed
don't care about no judges. You know that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I actually edged Povetkin myself, but it seemed like most people thought Hunter won. It doesn't matter, though. The thing about it is when you look at, Ortiz, Ruiz, and Povetkin, I think you could place them, or in Parker, for instance, I think you can place them and rearrange them any way you like. Again, I'm in line. I do think Ortiz is currently overrated by the ring. I think, he hasn't had a substantial victory in a long time. But of course, I understand the logic as well. If you were saying, well, hey, he was beating Deontay Wilder in most rounds that they fought. Deontay Wilder was like the number 2, number 3 guy at the time. So again, I understand why he still maintains a high stature. I just think it's time to demote him and promote these other guys who are a bit more active in winning.
Well, I just don't like the fact, Matthew, that they'll rank a guy number 4 because he was competitive in 2 fights. He got knocked out.
And I also think it's important to remember that Ortiz doesn't have that many fans. He's not hugely followed. His pay-per-view events have not done very well.
Well, I think this, too, when you talk about that, I don't think it's so much people being afraid of him. There's just not any money to fight Luis Ortiz.
Yeah, and I want to piggyback off that point for a second. Is that I've heard, and guys that I like, and I enjoy their analysis and stuff. They had said that Ortiz has been avoided for years, and I think to a degree that is true. But I also think it's again to your guys' point where he's not a big sell. I mean, stylistically, yeah. Do you want to fight a pretty good, technical southpaw? Stylistically, Ortiz he's different than most of the other guys in the division, so he presents some serious problems for a lot of these guys. Yeah, so there are guys who are just like, yeah, I'd rather not fight him, not necessarily outright ducking him. I don't know. I've heard that Dillian White was supposed to fight him in some eliminator and denied it. Again, I don't know. I'm not rubbing it.
I was told that Ortiz denied White.
Well, okay, most of what I've heard is that White avoided him in some eliminator. It doesn't matter to me. If White is a single example, I mean, I know Alexander Povetkin said that he would fight him when he was, I think, in his first or second fight back after he lost to Joshua. I don't doubt that at all. Povetkin has been one of the few guys I actually think would fight anybody. I mean, he fought Klitschko, he fought Joshua, he was scheduled to fight Wilder. I mean, to me, he's and I've heard that he beat Ortiz in the amateurs, though I can't find anything to substantiate that.
I think Povetkin is supposed to fight White in May. I think they're supposed to make an announcement next week sometime. At least that's what
exactly.
White thinks. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's pretty much set in stone. I think it's just a matter of getting the date and having these guys enter the ring and fight one another. And actually, if Dillian White beats Povetkin, I will probably recommend that White be placed above Wilder at that point because I think that would be fair. I mean, at that juncture, White will have, I think, a number of top 10 victories more than Deontay Wilder. Let me break it down for a second because Deontay Wilder has Dominic Breazeale, who was top 10 in his first fight. He beat Luis Ortiz, who was top 10 in the first fight. I'm not sure if he was universal in the second fight because I know he had failed a second test as well, but then they said it was, heart medication or something like that. So he's essentially got 2 top 10 guys on his resume. Dillian White has beaten Parker. Again, if he gets Povetkin, that's 2, so that essentially makes things even. He beat Chisora, who I'm not sure if he's entered the top 10 recently or not, but I doubt he was top 10.
Yeah, I don't know. Think he was. He might have been, but
yeah, but he also fought Anthony Joshua, who I don't think he was top 10 at the time, but became so. Who am I missing here? I feel like I'm missing one other guy. I
feel like you are too.
I feel like I'm missing one other guy, and for some reason I can't think of the name right now. Yeah, whatever. All right, yeah.
I'll look it up.
Let's box record.
We got a box record. That's what John
exactly.
Yeah. He beat Lucas Brown. I'm sure one of the 20 places that ranked people had him in there. I think Chisora in 2016, when he beat Chisora, may have been ranked.
Yeah, I know he beat.
Sure, though.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, he beat Takam beforehand, so he might have squeezed in there temporarily. But who else does he have on his resume? Parker, he obviously beat.
Well, if we go backwards, we got Marcus Volk, Oscar Rivas. There you go.
Rivas, yes, there you go. Yes, Rivas was in the top 10. So, I mean...
Yeah, he beat Rivas, he beat Parker. I think Chisora may have been ranked in 2016 when he fought him, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. We'll just leave that iffy. It doesn't matter. I mean, you have Parker, you have Rivas, you might have Povetkin. I mean, that will mean that Dillian White has beaten more top 10 guys than Deontay Wilder. So if White wins if he beats Povetkin, granted Povetkin doesn't look totally shot because he certainly does look old at this point. And I think that kind of takes some steam off Anthony Joshua's victory as well, because to me, Povetkin just looks, years past it, he just looks like he's getting slower and slower, even though he's still crafty. But yeah, I mean, Dillian White will have more top 10 wins than Deontay Wilder, so I think he should probably place it ahead of him at that point.
All right. Bob Arum today, and I'll go to Matthew on this first, says he's working on trying to put together a fight between welterweight champions Manny Pacquiao and Terence Crawford for June or July to unification. Aaron says if he can't put that together, then he'll look to set up a fight between Kell Brook and Terence Crawford. So let's hope he can set up Manny Pacquiao and Terence Crawford. Matthew, what do you think about a Crawford-Pacquiao matchup?
Well, I think it would be good because Pacquiao was a legend. I mean, he still has so many fans and people that still have an interest in him. He's always sold well in Nevada. He's always sold well on pay-per-views. So, of course, outside of losing to Mayweather in the last 7 or 8 years, he's still done very well. And I think most people think that he beat Jeff Horn. So he's still one of the greatest.
He's coming off a Keith Thurman win, too. That's the big thing. Because Jeff Horn announced 2 or 3 years ago. Most people forgot about that anyway.
Right. And I'd like to mention that right now I'm working for Everopedia. It's an online encyclopedia set based out of Santa Monica, California. I'm currently ranked number 5 in the number of edits. It's an encyclopedia run for profit. Of course, I think Pacquiao is a legend. He deserves more paydays and more chances to fight. While Kell Brook is a great fighter, but he's not in the same caliber as Manny.
No, and Kell Brook's no longer great. I don't know that Kell Brook was ever a great fighter. I think he was very good. But, Jeremiah, when I look at this, Pacquiao and Crawford intrigues me just because even though Manny Pacquiao's in advanced years here, I still think that's the best competition Crawford will have fought if he does fight him.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, like Matthew said, I think most people felt that Pacquiao beat Horn. I mean, I did feel that it was close. I mean, and if you look at the resume, I mean, Pacquiao since the Marquez knockout. I mean, actually, if you look at the Bradley fight beforehand, most people thought he won that fight. So, I mean, in the last, what are we talking about here? Almost 8 years or so. I mean, he's really only lost to Marquez, clearly. I mean, the guy is a living legend. I mean, he's a rarity in today's game where he seems like he'll fight anybody and anybody. But the problem is that, Arum getting these two guys together just seems like a stretch at this point because Pacquiao is no longer tied to Bob Arum. He seems like he's more in with PBC right now. So it just seems like he's more likely to fight somebody like Errol Spence or Mikey Garcia or Danny Garcia, somebody like that. Terrence Crawford, I know they wanted to make that fight. I think just about as soon as Terrence Crawford jumped up to 147, if Pacquiao would have been given the official decision, maybe Terrence Crawford's first fight at 147 would have been against Manny Pacquiao, but, that didn't come off. So I think it's unlikely. I think
Mikey Garcia is a more likely one, and I think Eddie Hearn is interested in setting that up from what I've read in Saudi Arabia in July.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I know they wanted Manny Pacquiao to fight Mikey Garcia last year. I mean, that was the plan. They wanted Errol Spence to fight Danny Garcia. That's why after the Sean Porter fight, they brought Danny Garcia into the ring, and they essentially announced it. Then Errol Spence, messed the plans up with the car accident and whatnot. So Pacquiao against Mikey Garcia, Mikey Garcia sells pretty well. That should do decent numbers. Both should collect decent paydays. So I think Kell Brook is much more likely, and Kell Brook's been fighting at 154 for a few years now, and he hasn't been particularly active. I do think, like you, that he's a talented guy, technically solid. I thought he beat Sean Porter, nipped it, but it was clear enough, not a whole lot of controversy there. And so I think it's a good fight for Terrence Crawford. And I think we know that, the top rank side of the street is lacking in marquee guys for Terrence Crawford. So what do you do? I mean, how do you fill the schedule if you can't fight a guy like Errol Spence, which we know has not taken place, or Danny Garcia, Sean Porter, which for some reason didn't come off, even though it seemed like they both wanted it. Again, it doesn't seem like there are any guys crossing over the street, right? Maybe Ugas. I don't know. Maybe they're willing to give him Ugas. I don't know. But it's like, what do you do with Terrence Crawford until you finally get the Errol Spence fight, if it ever comes off? I guess Kell Brook is one of the options.
Yeah, and the other scary thing is there's still rumors about Conor McGregor against Manny Pacquiao, Matthew.
Yeah, McGregor, he's not a great boxer. I don't think he's competitive with anybody in the top 30.
I don't think he's competitive with anybody as a professional boxer. Maybe Craig Houck. You know Craig Houck, Matthew?
He's from Indiana.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
as far as McGregor, he never had any professional fights before he fought Mayweather. And I talked to somebody else about this. I'm not sure what his amateur record was because I don't think he had any noteworthy wins in amateur boxing.
Well, I also think that him and Mayweather was pretty much a prearranged show. And if him and Pacquiao's not, Pacquiao will get him out in about a round or two.
Yeah, I agree.
So, all right, let's look at a fight that I'm interested in, Jeremiah. Regis Prograis and Maurice Hooker looks like it's set for April the 17th, live on DAZN in Oxon, Maryland. I mean, this is a good matchup, Jeremiah, and it's a bounce-back fight, and I find this extremely interesting.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, I've been on record for a few years now that I don't think that highly of Maurice Hooker. I do think he's a good fighter, but I just, I think his resume is a bit thin. I think he's done pretty well. I think he's managed to adapt and use his size a bit better. He's lanky for the weight class, and he is a good fighter. I've just never classed him among the very best in the division. I've always felt like he was a notch down. Like he beat Terry Flanagan, I think, for a belt. I mean, Flanagan, I think he was think he was a Frank Warren guy. So, no surprise that Terry Flanagan's getting, maybe I'm wrong here. I could be wrong. And if I am, somebody please correct me, whether here or, in the comment section. But I think Terry Flanagan was a Frank Warren guy, and he got to fight for a WBO trinket, which is, again, everybody knows the WBO and Frank Warren. They've been playing slap ass for many years. And so, but to me, Flanagan was never that impressive at 135. So I thought the win was a bit overrated. I didn't think it was that special. But Hooker is a good fighter. Again, he has adapted. He has learned to use his distance better. Again, his skill set has become better rounded. But I think Prograis is clearly the better operator. I thought Prograis was nip and tuck with Josh Taylor. I thought it was a very close fight. And to me, Hooker's he's just not quite on that level. I think Prograis is going to beat him handily. I see like an 8-4 type decision, maybe a late knockout. But Prograis to me is he's just clearly better operator.
All right, and we have Joe Baker on Spreaker leaves a comment. He says, Prograis Hunter is a really good fight. He said he's also looking forward to the undercard fight between Luke Camber and Javier Fortuna. And he said there should be plenty of action in both contests. What's your take on Prograis and Hooker, Matthew?
Well, Forbes.com says that Prograis made $2 million to fight Josh Taylor. And he's also had $1 million paydays for some of his other fights. I just don't think they're going to have him fight someone if he's going to lose. So he should beat Hooker no problem.
Yeah, because I think the one thing about Hooker and why he's been successful, Jeremiah, is they matched him really well with guys that fought styles he could handle. And I think that Prograis is a guy that's a bad style matchup for him.
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree. And again, sorry for my voice here. I'm raspy tonight, but I mean,
I don't buy that. Matthew, do you buy that he can't talk because he's been working out?
I'm not sure.
So what I want to know is, Jeremiah, is this.
Yeah.
What's
up?
Working out your throat?
No, man. Come on, Matthew knows when you hit the heavy bag. Some guys grunt, some guys, do the little blow off valve sound like it, like they're a turbocharged car or something. I mean, man, like when you're grunting constantly hitting the heavy bag, it affects your throat. Maybe I'm doing it wrong. I don't know. Maybe I need to use my diaphragm or something. I don't know. All I know is I just grunt when I hit the heavy bag. It affects my throat, and I do this show not long after I work out. All right. I get what I know what you're saying, Mike.
No, you don't.
I get what you're going with this.
Never in together.
Anyways, I think it is a bad styles matchup. Prograis is a good southpaw, and I like him because Prograis. I follow him on social media and whatnot. It's not everything he does. I don't follow anybody religiously because I'm not going to deify any of these guys, no matter how much I like them. But Prograis is a historian of sorts. I mean, he reads books. I remember he read the Clay Moyle book on, who was it, Sam Langford. Yeah, and he commented on it. He said that this is something that he does regularly. He's always studying the sport. And to be honest with you, his style reminds me a bit more like an old school guy. He keeps his hands down a bit. He rolls his shoulders pretty good, moves his head well. And he seems like he's getting better too. I actually think the Josh Taylor fight should make him a better fighter. Taylor had less fights going in, but he had far more amateur experience than Prograis had. So to me, Prograis should only get better from that fight, and Hooker just got blasted by Ramirez. So to me, Hooker is probably on the downside a little bit, just slight, because he still is young enough to be competitive. He's near physical prime and whatnot. But to me, Prograis should be getting better. Hooker should be getting worse. And like you said, I just think it's a bad styles matchup. I think Hooker's going to be eating straight left hands all night long.
Yeah, I don't think the fight goes the distance. I think Prograis stops him also, but we'll talk more about that as the time gets near. You guys got anything else you want to talk about tonight before we wrap it up? Matthew?
Yes, again, my name is Matthew O'Neill. I sometimes use Matthew E. O'Neill. I use my middle initial. I'm currently working for Everpedia. It's an online encyclopedia set on the internet. I have a tremendous interest in boxing because I competed myself in USA boxing. I just think that sometimes the best thing a fighter has is confidence, and once you start having losses, then sometimes the person's career is over with, like Deontay Wilder. I just don't think Deontay Wilder will recover his career after losing. I think that his career is basically over with now.
All right, Jeremiah, anything else to add?
Yeah, no, I think he's spot on there. I mean, I know we elaborated on this at length on Sunday, and we all pretty much agreed. I mean, again, John was far more.
John didn't agree because
Yeah, John
John's
was.
the president of Tyson Fury fan
Yeah,
club.
that's true. I mean, John is far more optimistic about Wilder's prospects than I think Deontay Wilder himself. But to John's credit, he is open-minded about it. I mean, he has. I follow him on Twitter, and he was like, "Well, I think Wilder should just take the third fight, get smaller, try to do the best that he can, and to reform his game, and just let the chips fall where he may." You can tell that even John is not under the impression that Wilder will win a third fight. Maybe that he can just improve upon his performance, and maybe he could win. But I think there's a lot of skepticism in John as well, especially after a thrashing like that. But I think Matthew is spot on. I mean, we saw it with better guys, right? I mean, Mike Tyson was not the same after he got beat by Evander Holyfield. Wilder is not that kind of a fighter. I mean, and I thought I've heard it. I'm trying to think of where I heard it, but I thought they brought up a great point where Tyson really was a street guy where he came from the ghetto. He had a rough upbringing. And so he really was the kind of guy to look you in the face and want to kill you. Obviously, he didn't have the mental capacity to deal with the losses. But Wilder acts sort of like Tyson did, where he acts intimidating and he talks shit.
Yeah.
Exactly. He's not deep down inside. He's not like Tyson was. And so I agree with Matthew. I just think it's pretty much over from here on out. I'm not saying that he's going to be shot, but as I noted on the show that I did with Ryan Kinzet and a few other British guys, Deontay Wilder he's not a product of the Soviet school of boxing or the Cuban school of boxing where he learned the fundamentals first, right? He had years and years of amateur experience.
Well, he started when he was 20 years old or close to it.
Yeah, I think it was 19. Yeah, I think it was 19. And again, he's not a byproduct of one of these elite amateur systems where he built the fun. He's not like Sergey Kovalev. That's the example I like to use, where Kovalev is technically very, very good, right? He's got a solid base. His technique is great. His sense of distance is very good. Right? His jab is a stabbing one. It's accurate. It's varied. Wilder is not like that. I mean, he learned late. And it's the power before anything. He can't boil his style down like Kovalev did and just stick to the fundamentals and expect to win a decision like Kovalev did against, this wasn't a decision, of course, but, or like he did against Eleider Alvarez in the rematch. So, Wilder's 34, he'll be 35 in October. You're not going to teach that old dog many new tricks.
Know what? Even guys that you teach the new tricks. John Mugabe was an Olympic boxer. He was really good. He punched like a sumbitch. He had a nice jab. He could move a little bit. But once that aura of invincibility is gone, I think the real thing, and here, maybe Matthew, you can comment on this, it's not so much just the fighter losing confidence in himself. It is the guy that's going to fight John Mugabe or Mike Tyson next, just gain some confidence by seeing that he wasn't invincible.
Right. What stands out, of course, when you watch Wilder is his legs appear weak underneath him.
Yeah, they're tiny. He couldn't carry that 40-pound Halloween costume.
Right. So it looks like his opponents will have confidence in every time they compete against him from now on.
Yeah, I think he ought to just fight Luis Ortiz 7 more times. And he'll be fine then. But, yeah, because we've seen this before. I mean, who are some of the guys you remember, Jeremiah? The guys that stick out to me are like Mac Foster, who was 24-0, 24 knockouts. Jerry Quarry knocks him out, never the same. Alex Stewart, I think he was right around the 24-0, and they might all have been first-round knockouts until Holyfield beat him. And then another guy, which people forget about, was Alex Garcia, who was a great amateur fighter in the early 80s. Actually had a lot of competitive fights on ABC against Talafio Stevenson. But once he lost, he was never the same. And I think what we see is through the times of boxing, guys that have this, I'm going to knock you out, number one, they tend to lose track, even if they had it, a little bit of the skill once they've knocked so many people out in a row and they go for the big punch. And it's really hard to recover from.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's one of those things. I mean, once you lose, I mean, obviously some guys are better than others, and I've been seeing this a lot on Twitter and other, the social media sphere, where people are like, oh, this is, one loss doesn't end a career, and we need to get over the undefeated stuff. Listen, hardcore boxing fans know that one loss is not that big of a deal. We've never thought that, but it's all circumstantial. Sometimes one loss is enough to derail a guy's entire career. You've noted a few examples. Some guys are just better at it. I mean, look at a guy like Amir Khan. I used this example earlier too, but look at Amir Khan. Amir Khan, or like Thomas Hearns, for instance. Thomas Hearns got stopped by Ray Leonard, but he still fought as if he was coming in there to wipe you out. Some guys are better mentally prepared for it than others, and with this day and age, with the emphasis on the undefeated record and stuff, it probably means more to lose your zero today than it ever has. But again, hardcore fans recognize that one loss isn't necessarily the end of you. But we also recognize that there's nuance to it. It's just not like, hey, you lose and that's the end of you. It depends on you. Whether it's the end of you is up to you.
Yeah, and don't
right?
you think, Jeremiah, that a lot of that and why the loss is a bigger deal today is just because they don't fight as much. You don't have as many times to redeem yourself or to get back up on the horse right after you get knocked off of it.
Exactly. Right. I mean, because these guys are collecting bigger money for doing less work. I mean, and I can't blame the guys. I mean, that sounds like a dream job, right? Who doesn't want to do less work for more money? Hell, I would like to do less work for more money. But yeah, you're right. I mean, these guys don't have the chance to redeem themselves as often. And, a lot of times the career paths are it's questionable. Some guys will jump right back into it. Remember when Ricky Hatton got flattened by Manny Pacquiao, and then he comes back a few years later against a guy that a lot of people are like, hey dude, don't do it, take somebody softer. Then he gets knocked out with a body shot, and that's pretty much that. But some guys do, some guys don't. It's not right. Nobody's riding Deontay Wilder's butt because of the loss. But I think a lot of people see it the way we do, that, hey, he's a big puncher. His career is predicated on the notion of him knocking you out. He's technically stopped right. I'm not doing the John thing here where he stopped everybody he's fought, but every name that he has fought except Tyson Fury, he has stopped. Right. So it's one of those things. I mean, the aura is broken, and look at the amount of excuses that he's making now. And again, all sorts of guys have to rationalize. They have to internalize why they lost. But this is different, right? Deontay Wilder he's not using tactical excuses like, hey, I tried to jab to the body, but he was countering me over the top with the right hand, right? I tried to lead with the left hook, but he kept blocking it and hit me with his own. These are all like stupid. It's my costume. It's Mark Breland. Breland was influenced by Anthony Durrell, who knows Sugar Hill, and Kenny Bayless was biased, and Tyson Fury was dirty. I mean, to me, I just don't like that. I don't like it.
Instead of taking responsibility, he is trying to place blame.
Exactly. I just think he's on the wrong course here, and he's not making himself any new fans because of it.
Well, put it like this. We talked right after the fight, and I'm not a big Deontay Wilder fan. I think he acts like a moron, and I don't think he's overly talented. But if you remember, our first conversation after the fight was I was impressed by the fact that he said the better man won and how hard he fought. He may have fought poorly. He may have got knocked out. But, he didn't lay down in the third round and just tap out. And then the next day, we start hearing about 40-pound costumes and Mark Breland and all this other horse crap. And I'm sorry. I've seen guys today say, well, Breland should have let him kill him because, Tyson or
Warriors code or something.
Yeah, Deontay Wilder had already had this talk with his family and his trainers, and I'm pretty sure Deontay Wilder's little girls weren't saying, "Yeah, Daddy, if you got to die for a belt, you should." I mean, this is absolutely insane. I mean, it just is. I mean, Mark Breland, we've had him on our show before. He's a hell of a nice guy. I don't know how great of a trainer is, but he's the assistant trainer. If you're going to blame anybody, blame JD's, who's been training you since you were 19 and you still can't put together a combination. That would be my take on it. But, Jeremiah, anything else?
No. I think that's spot on. I mean, I know we've. I don't want to engage in bragging or anything, but I mean, we've been saying this for years. I mean, as long as we've been doing this podcast, which is what, 4 or 5 years now? What 5 years come April? 5 years come April, I believe. When do we?
I did it with Dave Sidersky for a while.
Yeah. I think I started in April of 2016. So it's been a little while. I mean, but ever since we've been talking about Deontay Wilder, we've pretty much been calling it. I mean, you've been a bit more skeptical than I have. I was willing to wait it out and let the results, let the results speak for themselves. But Wilder's just pretty much done it. And the good thing about it is, the one thing that I said when we did our pre-fight show, is I'm happy. I would, or maybe it was the post-fight show, but I'm happy now that the narrative is being corrected, right? I mean, beforehand you have this, he's got 10 defenses and he's going to break Ali's mark, in his second run. And, he's got the highest knockout percentage of any heavyweight champion in history and all this other stuff. I was just happy to see, Wilder lose. So the narrative is now more accurate to what it's supposed to be, right? He's a limited guy who can punch hard. He's not special.
Yeah. Hey, Matthew, once again, I want to thank you. Everybody go check out Everpedia, correct?
Yes.
All right, check out Matthew O'Neill at Everpedia. Matt, we'd love to have you on again sometime, so stay in touch.
Okay, well, thank you.
All right, guys, I want to remind you can hear all of our shows pretty much wherever you find podcasts, including Spreaker, Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, you name it, we're there. Make sure you rate us, like us, subscribe, leave comments. You can follow us on Twitter at Grueling Truth. We also have Jeremiah. You can follow at TGT Boxing. So make sure you check that out tomorrow. We will be back with the NFL show. Myself, Anthony Servino, and Sam Teets at 1 o'clock. At 3 o'clock, we'll have Xavier Basketball Weekly with myself and legendary Xavier broadcaster Andy Mack Williams. And then tomorrow night, me and Brian Schmidt with the XFL show at 9 o'clock Eastern. So for now, for Matthew O'Neill, Jeremiah Preisser, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.